Hey, what's up guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here and welcome back to my weekly Q&A session. I hope you've all had a great weekend so far and I hope you're going to have a better one because this is my favorite time of the week when I get to sit down with you guys, my community members. It's so cool being able to have these little off-the-cuff things with you, and you're such a great audience. Thank you for always being here every week. Before we get started, I've got a few things I want to talk about. I know some of you probably want to go ahead and jump to the Q&A. I'm sure one of my patrons below will happily post a timestamp down there. Especially FYI Harambe, I know that you usually post timestamps for questions, and thank you so much for doing that. Big shout out to you, and now I can actually pin them to the top where they deserve to be. So before we get into it, I do want to take a second to say, for those of you who are in Charlottesville, Virginia today, regardless of what political stance you have, it doesn't matter. I hope you're safe. I hope everyone over there is safe, and just everyone be safe. Okay? Look out for yourselves today. So, also regarding next week's Q&A, I just want to let you know that I will be out of town on Saturday. Don't worry, you'll still get your Q&A on Saturday night like you usually do, but I will be producing it and pre-uploading it on Friday. So, have your questions in before then. If you're not sure how to submit them, I'll get to that in just a second too. So yes, you'll still get your Q&A on time next week. I'm just going to be doing it a little bit earlier. Or at least producing it earlier. The final thing I want to talk about is you've probably noticed the lack of streaming this week. Typically I stream on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and you probably noticed, hey, Tyrant, you didn't stream this week, and there's a reason for that. So, for those of you who don't know how I operate, I have two machines that I primarily use. One is my Alienware machine that a very good friend of mine made a very generous donation generously donated that machine to me about 5 years ago. Still running strong. I love the hell out of it. I use it for about 90% of all the work that I do, not just on the site, but in general. The second machine that I have is an MSI laptop, the one that the Alienware one ultimately replaced. And when I moved into my new apartment, there was only one broadband outlet in the entire place, which sucks because it's not in my studio. So what I basically ended up doing is placing that laptop and hardwiring it into the broadband connection so that I could do streams better and so forth, and just so that I wouldn't have to upload over wireless all the time. Having said that, the way that I have this machine set up is in a RAID 0. And for those of you who don't know what that is, for those of you who aren't really into the technical field, a RAID 0 is a hard drive configuration, and essentially it allows two hard drives to work together in unison to give better read and write speeds. This is great for streaming, great for video game capture. The consequence of a RAID 0, I'm sure many of you know, is if one drive goes bad, the entire partition goes to shit. And not only that, because the hard drives work together and the data is split between the two, it's not just as simple as taking the hard drive out, maybe there's a corrupt boot file or whatever, putting a SATA to USB connector to it and just extracting the data off of there. Unfortunately, if you lose a hard drive in a RAID 0 configuration, odds are you've lost everything. So I've been spending a fair amount of the week trying to recover that, and that's why I haven't been able to stream, and I'm hoping to have it back up and running tomorrow. If not, then I'll do sort of a FaceTime Q&A with you guys. Not really a Q&A, but just a FaceTime live broadcast so that you guys can ask me questions and just generally interact with me, and maybe I'll throw some gameplay up in the background or something, just so that you don't have to stare at my ugly face the entire time. So that's essentially it. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into this. So for those of you who want to submit your questions, which I can't wait to see what they are, they're always so good. I usually take about 10 to 12 questions a week. All you have to do is ask it in the comments section below, or you can hit me up on Twitter at MythicTyrant. And if you aren't following me, definitely do that, because I usually put the Twitter questions in a higher priority. It's not that I think they're any more important than the ones in the comment section, but I just feel like people are going the extra mile just to follow me on a different platform as well, and just going the extra mile to reach out to me. So I usually hold those to a bit more of a higher priority, if that makes any sense. And plus, you get to see a lot of cool stuff that, I talk about with Axeman and Hidden Xperia and Late Night Gaming and Bungie and 343 Industries. And you can come in on those conversations. You can join us. And we want to hear your opinions, especially since we had a lot of drama this past week regarding Atman's channel. Unfortunately, he's going through some issues with it right now, and hopefully it'll get cleared up, because he's a great YouTuber and I can't wait to see what he has planned next. And so definitely give your support to Ackman. So he's a great guy and an excellent Halo YouTuber. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. Our first question of the week comes from Louis Solis. And Louis asks, do you think Master Chief should have died at the end of Halo 4? Wouldn't that be a hero's way out? No, I don't think that he should have died at the end of Halo 4. I mean, we've talked about this in other videos where I do think that Master Chief's ultimate fate in the Halo franchise should be that maybe he sacrifices himself. I don't think Halo 4 would have been the time to do that. I think the way they actually ended Halo 4 was perfect. It's just the way they did Halo 5 that was all fucked up. So my hope is that, yes, once the Reclaimer saga comes to an end, that's how Master Chief ends up. I know we all love Master Chief, but I'm hoping instead of moving forward in time for future Halo games after Halo 6 or Halo Reclamation or whatever it is, they actually go back and redo some of the other stuff, highlight some of the other events that have happened in the Halo franchise that we haven't seen in games yet. So that's my stance on that, Luis, and thank you so much. I appreciate your comment. Our next question comes from Dale Mixon. And Dale asks, do you think Armor Lock and other Spartan abilities should return in future Halo titles? Love your work, keep it up. Thanks, Dale, I appreciate it, man. And the answer is no, hell no, absolutely not. One of the things I hated most about Reach was the armor abilities. It was so un-Halo. It just didn't feel like Halo at all. Armor Lock is probably one of the most controversial things they've added to a Halo game. It caused such a big war in the Bungie forums. I never want to see that happen again. Halo 4 had armor abilities, but they were better fine-tuned and felt more organic to the game rather than shoehorned in like those weird hologram things that were in Reach. So hopefully that answers your question. No more armor abilities. I'm actually fine with the one they have now, which is the thruster pack, and that's something that I can see proceeding, or at least coming back in the next Halo game. So great question, Dale. Appreciate it. Our next question comes from Mudkip454, and Mudkip asks, given 343's will to change everything, whoa, do you realistically think that we'll have wall running? I don't want it at all. God, I hope not. I don't think so personally, because then you're just ripping right from another title. It doesn't surprise me that Call of Duty has done that. They steal everything. But I guess they saw how big of a hit it was in Titanfall, so they tried to do it themselves and did a piss poor job doing it. I can't see them ever doing that with Halo. I think the thruster pack and things like ground pound and sprint, I think sprint's probably the closest thing we'll see to copying another franchise, but really I don't even see it as copying a franchise so much as adapting to what others have done. Wall running is not a standard at this point and shouldn't be. I think that works for Titanfall and nothing else. But that's a great question, Mudkip, and I appreciate it. Our next question comes from King Shocky 18. Always good to see you, King. And he asks, what is the most understandable Halo game of all time? If you're talking about the one that's most easy to interpret, I guess you could have a three-way tie there. I think Halo Combat Evolved is probably the one that you could play by itself without having to worry about any of the Halo titles, including Reach. You wouldn't have to worry about playing Reach. I think it's the best standalone game that doesn't need any extra explanation behind it. I would say a nice runner-up would be Halo 3 ODST. It had probably one of the best stories out there, if not the best story. And I could probably play that on its own and not have to worry about the rest. But the thing of it is with ODST is that there's stuff that happens before the game and stuff that happens afterwards. And that does kind of leave you wondering a little bit. So in that regard, I think Combat Evolved takes the lead there. The other one is Halo 4. Halo 4's story, in my opinion, you know, maybe not yours, but in my opinion, was fantastic. I thought it was very well done. Yes, it does have a lot of outside lore that could use some explaining, but they do a pretty decent job of doing that in-game, even if they throw a lot of shit at you at once, like that 5-minute cutscene that basically retconned humanity's existence. I'm like, what the hell? Outside of that, I thought it was a pretty good standalone story, and I wish we had seen that approach to Halo 5. So Combat Evolved is probably the best one there. And so that's a great question, King Shocky. It's good to see you here. Our next question comes from Hollis Kadirli III. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And his question is, if Master Chief gets an AI partner for Halo 6, Cortana not included, who would it be? I see one of two things coming from that. So depending on how Halo Wars 2 ends, it could be Isabel, because we already know that the events of Halo Wars 2 are going to have a direct impact on Halo 6. So it could be that we see Captain Cutter and his crew, along with the Banished, join up with Master Chief and and company. Or if it's not going to be Isabel, I could also see possibly Roland. He's the AI on the Infinity. And so that could be an option too. I don't know if they would remove him from Infinity though. I think that could be a little bit risky. But it's either going to be, in my opinion, if Chief does get another AI, I can see it either being Isabel, which would be awesome. It'd be a great way to bridge Halo Wars, the Halo Wars universe with Halo War, or with the general Halo universe, and bringing those two together. So that's what I'm thinking right there. I think it could be Isabel or it could be Roland, depending on how big of an impact Halo Wars 2 has on the current Halo universe, or the standard Halo universe, the one that we all are used to, the AAA title. So that's a great question, Hollis, and thank you, man. I appreciate it. And our next question comes from Planetary Gaming. And Planetary asks, MythicTyrant, do you think that Halo should add third person like Star Wars Battlefront did? For theater mode, I think it's fine the way it is, because in theater mode you can have third person. In terms of actual combat, it just doesn't really fit Halo. The only way I could see that working is if it was a completely different title and it was always third person. That's my opinion, just because, you know, Halo's been a certain way for so long now, whereas Star Wars Battlefront is just now coming out. If you're not counting the older versions, it's basically a new franchise, so to speak. So the way they did it can work for it, but I don't see that working with Halo. But that's still a good question, Planetary, and I appreciate it. Man, we had a lot of questions on Twitter this week. That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Our next question comes from that guy across the street. Why does that name always give me nightmares? I love it, though. And so that guy asked, do you think Awakening the Nightmare will continue into Halo 6 or just be there for fan service? I think that it's going to influence Halo 6. Do I think that it will continue straight into Halo 6? It depends on whether or not they're going to release any other expansions for Halo Wars 2 between Awakening the Nightmare and Halo 6. Because keep in mind, we're not planning on seeing Halo 6 until probably 2019 at the earliest at this point. At least that's what I'm guessing, since we didn't see anything featured at E3 this year. So depending on how many expansions they want to do for Halo Wars 2 will, in my opinion, depend on if Awakening the Nightmare leads right into Halo 6. But I think the events of Awakening the Nightmare will have an impact on it. So that's a great question, that guy across the street, and stay across the street. I'm just kidding. Our next question comes from Vel. And Vel asks, Dear Tyrant, I'm Vel. What is your favorite weapon throughout Halo? Even weapons you couldn't acquire, and why do you like the weapon, and do you think this weapon has changed Halo? To answer your question, yes and yes. My favorite weapon, hands down, is the Gravity Hammer. More specifically, the Halo 3 Gravity Hammer. I love the look of it, I love the feel of it, and it has absolutely changed Halo, because if it hadn't been for that, we would not have Griffball, and that is one of my favorite multiplayer modes out there, if not my most favorite, with the runner-up being Living Dead. So, and of course, Warzone. But yeah, absolutely, the Gravity Hammer is hands down my favorite. I love using it in the campaign. I did some pretty cool shit with it in Halo 4. If you check out my Halo 4 Laser Challenge run, when I was on Midnight and I was on the Night Tower, and I was just slaughtering those knights left and right. It felt so good. But yes, the Gravity Hammer, hands down, and yes, it definitely changed Halo. It's a great question, Vel, and I appreciate it. Our next question comes from Views Venomous. I always love this guy. And Views asks, what would you play, says, would you play Star Wars Battlefront 2 when it's released? Is that a question? Oh my god, absolutely I'm going to play that. I loved the original one. I'm really excited that the Star Wars Battlefront universe is taking cues from Titanfall. And what do I mean by that? So, Star Wars Battlefront, like the original Titanfall, did not have a campaign. It had a campaign-esque type deal in the sense that you could train and you could do skirmish modes and stuff by yourself. And Titanfall, of course, had exposition while you were doing multiplayer, but essentially neither one had a true campaign. Titanfall 2 came out and had a fantastic campaign. A little on the short side, but it fit it perfectly, so I'm not complaining. I love Titanfall 2's campaign. I know that they're introducing a campaign in Star Wars Battlefront 2. I'm really eager to play that one. I will absolutely be doing that and featuring it on this website. So that's a great question, Fuse Venomous, and thank you. Our next question comes from Shadow King. Ooh. And Shadow King asks, do you think the Halo books should be turned into a game, like having the Escalation series, for example? As for the game and other books are story DLC. Okay, basically he's asking, should the Halo books be turned into games? Yes, because I don't read the fucking books anymore, and basically every time I start making videos and stuff, I feel like there's a lot of the lore that I don't know that is now being considered canon in the Halo universe, whereas in the Bungie days it really wasn't. And they've proven that in one of their interviews back in the day when Reach came out. And so now that there's so much canon out there that I'm not familiar with, it's kind of like, well, I don't know what to do, because I really don't have time to read a whole series of books. And then there's movies out there and comics and graphics novels, and it's crazy. So I would love to see, at the very least, mini games done for these, or it could be movies, but I prefer games, so that I can catch up a little bit. And I think that's something they could work on after Halo 6. That way they don't run out of content, and it sort of brings things full circle. So I hope that answers your question, Shadow King. That's a great one, and thank you. Our next question comes from Patrick Hild, and Patrick asks, besides Halo, what game series are you most passionate about? Oh, this is a good one. Probably my favorite series outside of Halo is Resident Evil. And it's such a shame too, because I've done a lot of Resident Evil videos on this site. I've done full campaign and cutscene runs. I've done a lot of stuff. And no one watches them, and it pisses me off because I spend so much time making them, days on end, just remembering where all the puzzles are and everything, having to do it in one go, which means I can't take a piss or anything while I'm actually playing because I can't pause it. And you know, I work days to put these videos up, and no one ever watches them. It's such a shame too, because I'm a huge fan of that series. There's so much lore to enjoy. There's a lot of great stuff in there. My plan is to do a full campaign of cutscenes for the Resident Evil 2 remake when it comes out, hopefully next year. And I've also gone ahead and repurchased all the Resident Evil games that came out for Xbox on Xbox. So I've currently got on there, I've already done Resident Evil the remaster as well as Resident Evil 0. I've gone ahead and purchased Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, and of course I'm not done with Resident Evil 7 yet, so I've got all those in the works. Hopefully they remaster both Resident Evil 2 and 3 because I love those, and maybe Code Veronica 2. I actually own all the games, but they're on GameCube, and I think I've got the older ones on the original PlayStation. So hopefully we can get most of those on Xbox. I'll play those. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Definitely look it up. Look up MythicTyrant Resident Evil because they're there. And, you know, I worked hard on it, but loved every minute of it. So I hope you guys do too. That's a great question, Patrick. Thank you. And why don't you tell me what your favorite game series besides Halo is in the comments below. And our final question of the week, our star question, comes from Kamikaze R. And Kamikaze asks, would you like to see another game like Halo 3 ODST, or what other kind of spin-off would you like to have in the Halo saga? So this is a great question because, quite frankly, I do think there needs to be a sequel to Halo 3 ODST. There's a lot that happens between ODST and Halo 5. And why do I say that's important? Because, you know, that's obvious, right? Ton of shit's happened. The fact of the matter is, Gunnery Sergeant Buck was a main character in Halo 3 ODST, played by Nathan Fillion. He's probably one of the coolest characters ever in the Halo series. One of my favorite actors of today. And so all of a sudden in Halo 5, he's a Spartan. And there's a story to tell there. You know, I'm sure that they've answered the question in outside lore somewhere, but I don't want it in outside lore. I want a game about it. ODST was so much fun. It was a darker Halo game without being gritty like Reach at the same time. It was a very different feeling. I loved having that hub world there. I loved seeing the perspectives of multiple ODSTs, they brought it all home at the end. The graphics were beautiful. It was just so much fun to play. Like I said, New Mombasa, the streets of New Mombasa, that was probably one of my favorite Halo things ever. And I think they could expand on that concept a lot and could add that to another game. Maybe that could be the vast majority of another Halo game. That would be awesome. But I'd love to see an ODST sequel that sort of explains Buck's journey. I think that would be fantastic. I think that he has a big fan base out there. I think there's a lot of people out there that would love to see more about Spartan Buck before he became a Spartan and after the events of Halo 3 ODST, especially since we never find out what happens with that engineer at the end of ODST. So I'd love to have an explanation on that and what they did after the events of ODST and what they did towards the end of the war, or what happened after the war when they started running into the Storm Covenant. You know, everything Buck and the rest of the team did, I think, is important. I don't want to see them just drop off the face of the earth because they were great characters. It was a fantastic story, and I think you deserve to hear more about it. So that's a great question. And you guys tell me in the comments below, what game would you like to see, and would you like to see Halo 3 ODST sequel included after Halo 6? You can let me know in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter at MythicTyrant. A link to my Twitter feed can be found in the description below. And if you like this video and you want to see more and you want to keep up to date with all your Halo news, click that subscribe button for more great content every single day right here on MythicTyrant.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys and gals. It was great having you all here. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I'll catch you all right back here next time. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.